Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for making it here today. It is my absolute honor and privilege to welcome His Excellency Aljubeir, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for taking time off of your very busy schedule and coming to Neom House. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And sharing your thoughts, and I'm sure that everyone is looking forward to hear about. As the world is tackling a lot of the pressing challenges, His Excellency has been on the forefront of the Kingdom's efforts to tackle climate change and address it. The Kingdom has announced investments of more than $186 billion across more than 80 projects related to clean energy transition and reducing the Kingdom's carbon footprint. More recently, His Excellency has been a leading voice in COP28, talking about the Kingdom's efforts in addressing this challenge and the need for global collaboration, which His Excellency always talks about. During today's session, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Kingdom's efforts, as well as His Excellency's thoughts on how the Kingdom plays a role not only in the region, but also globally to address climate change. Thank you very much again, Your Excellency, for being here. And I'll start by just asking, what is the Kingdom doing differently in addressing climate change compared to the rest of the world? And what are we doing that we're not getting enough attention for?
Saudi Arabia is setting the rules, not trying to achieve them. We want to be transformative in how we deal with the issue of climate change. We want to make sure that we have an effective ways of dealing with it, and we want to do it in a collaborative way. We believe that unless we work together, we're going to achieve nothing. Unless we work in a rational and scientific manner, we're going to be talking past each other. Unless we are honest with each other about what is achievable and what is not achievable, there will be a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of posturing. And we saw that, unfortunately, at COP28, and we saw it at COP27, and we see it every time we open up the newspaper and read about it. When people say we need to reduce hydrocarbons, and then their own countries are increasing production of hydrocarbons, that's hypocrisy. When people say we need to eliminate or reduce hydrocarbon production, and then when production is reduced, everybody is up in arms, arguing that you're declaring economic war against them and that you're squeezing the global economy. That's hypocrisy. We believe, as the largest exporter of oil in the world, that we can be a standard, and we are a standard for how we combat or confront the challenge of climate change. We do so by adopting a comprehensive and a holistic approach that includes all aspects of our government and our society, that includes scientific approaches and new experimental approaches, that uses existing technologies, that uses nature-based solutions, that uses conservation and behavioral changes, and we put it all together, and this is what drives our efforts with regards to environmental matters and with regards to climate change.
And I know the Kingdom's efforts go beyond just the Kingdom and the region. It's not only the Saudi Green Initiative or the Middle East Green Initiative. We are an active voice in many bilateral and multilateral organizations. Can you tell us a little bit more about the role that we play in these multilateral organizations?
Well, everything starts at home. And what we have done in Saudi Arabia, as you mentioned, more than 80 initiatives. We have committed more than $185 billion to those initiatives, which is huge compared to the size of our economy. And I believe very few countries, if any, have committed as much in terms of resources and in terms of political capital as Saudi Arabia has in order to move this process forward, because we see the effects of climate change. We have more sandstorms than we had in the past. We see temperatures rising. The science is indisputable, and unless we deal with it, we all will suffer, and our children and grandchildren will suffer. So we are serious about this. And we also believe that you cannot go it alone. It has to be comprehensive. When we have dust issues in Saudi Arabia, the dust comes from as far away in the east as the Chinese desert, and as far away in the west as the Sahara Desert. It's not unique to our region. Dust from the Sahara Desert has been picked up in Scandinavia, as far away in the north, and as far away in the west as Costa Rica. So this is a global issue, and it's not just dust. It's methane, it's carbon, everything. And we have set in place initiatives like the Middle East Green Initiative, which brings together more than 20 countries to reverse the process of desertification, to plant up to 40 billion trees over the coming decades, to help countries adapt what we call a circular carbon economy, where this comprehensive, holistic approach that I touched upon in the beginning of my conversation. So we have that. We are involved with oceans. We are involved with the Global Methane Pledge. We are involved with restoration of wildlife. We are involved with preservation of indigenous populations, and on and on and on. And we are involved in those issues because of our strong commitment to working multilaterally, and because of our strong belief that unless we do this together, we're not going to be able to overcome this. And we try to avoid as much as we can hypocrisies and contradictions and political grandstanding, and maybe we should be more vocal about what we're doing. But our objective is to deal with the problem, not talk about it.
And when we are leading by example and obviously walking the talk, how does that put us that puts us obviously in a position of better credibility when we're talking to others at a global multilateral organizations. Do you see the same seriousness and commitment from the other players sitting on the table?
I hope so. I think we're beginning to see more seriousness. We're beginning to see more rationality in the discussion, and less emotions.
Yeah.
And we're beginning to see engagement rather than confrontation. I think you mentioned about what Aljubeir is doing. I want to talk about your project.
Mm-hmm.
What you are in NEOM doing with regards to environmental issues, and with regards to planting, and with regards to renewable energy, and with regard to building materials, and with regard to sustainability, no other place on the planet is doing it at the level at which you are doing it. Mm-hmm. And you're not talking about it. And I don't say this as criticism.
Yeah.
I say this because that's our nature as Saudis. When you talked about leading by example, we are. We are not following standards. Mm-hmm. We are setting standards for the world. And I believe that it's important for us to be more public about the standards that we are setting for the world, so that people can emulate them. Yeah. If you talk a little bit about what you're doing in NEOM, I think jaws will drop. Yeah. No place else in the world people are doing what you're doing with regards to environment, with regards to wildlife, with regards to sustainability, with regards to renewable energy, and on and on and on.
I think basically, obviously, what you're saying is absolutely true, and we're an extension of the Kingdom's commitment to sustainability. As you can see, everything that we're showing today really links around this. It's the core, at the heart and core of everything we do. We're committing to 100% renewable energy region at a scale that's never happened before. We're committing to planting 100 million trees as part of the Saudi Green Initiative within NEOM by 2030. We're committing to leaving 95% of the land as nature reserve untouched. So a lot of what we're doing is an extension of, obviously, the Kingdom's commitment, and it's epitomized in the standards that are being set in NEOM. And as you said, every time we discuss, and this is a fact, every time we discuss global standards in delivering a sustainable solution, whether it's in energy, water, or building materials, we keep getting pushed back by our board to set the standard and not to follow a global standard. So everything you're saying translates immediately to what we're doing in NEOM, and we're glad to be part of it. Us being in Davos and having the space is precisely to talk a lot more about everything we're doing, not only in the terms of construction progress, but also the ideas and the values that NEOM drives beyond this. If you don't mind, I want to go back to COP28. Okay. I know Saudi has been a leading voice, and you have been, and the need to take action. How can we translate the conversations from COP28 into tangible action?
I think it's being done. When you look at Glasgow, there was a lot of conflict and a lot of disagreements and a lot of emotions, but not much in terms of practical. People wanted to set increasing the higher targets. without even meeting the basic targets that were set 5 years, 10 years, 15 years earlier. So why are we trying to set targets that when we haven't even met our basic targets, just so we look good in front of public opinion, just so we get positive newspaper articles? That's not responsible. When we came to COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, the conversation became more reasonable, and there was a sense of let's move from, to simplify it, from talk to action. And in all fairness, this began to happen. When we moved into the COP, the most recent COP, one of the signs of seriousness was that the oil and gas industry was part of it. You cannot talk about climate change and confronting it without bringing in the major oil producers. They have a huge role to play in producing energy in a more efficient and more clean way. They have a huge role to play when it comes to transitioning to a green energy, whether it's hydrogen, green hydrogen, clean hydrogen, ammonia, you name it. And they have a huge role to play when it comes to shipping standards and how we deal with this. You cannot exclude them. So here they were included. And at COP we had conversations with regards to economic support for countries that need support. How do we make financing available to countries that need financing, and how do we finance renewable energy projects and clean energy projects? Discussions with regard to realistic ways of moving forward. And it took some work, but I think the document that came out of it was a realistic document which moves us closer towards a more practical solution. And so in that sense, I'm optimistic. And of course, it was expanded to include youth. It was expanded to include issues like the building materials industry. Nobody talks about cement and the building material industry being a huge, huge source of pollution. It was ignored. Now it's not. And it goes on, and there were other issues. So I think we're moving towards being much more practical and much more realistic about tackling the challenges. And I personally have no doubt we will meet the challenge, because we have the resources, we have the technology, we are increasingly having the political will to do so, and the realization that we have to do it together, we can't do it alone, is now beginning to sink in. And as a consequence, I think we will be able to do it. We just need to keep doing what we're doing and do it better.
Excellent. Another example of leading by example in NEOM in that regard is building the largest green hydrogen project in the world at a scale that's never been done before. Between last year and this year, it's fully closed, financed by international and regional and local banks. Another validation of the importance of not only the sector, but NEOM coming to life into business with an initiative that really sets the standard globally. If you don't mind me asking, I have a question around what are the conversations like within the highest decision-making bodies in the kingdom around climate change? Is it top of mind? Is it ahead of the agenda? Are we, at obviously your level, what are the conversations like around driving climate change within the kingdom?
I believe I would be correct if I said that the issue of climate change is at the top of the agenda of every government, not just Saudi Arabia. And I believe that the issue of climate change has now become the #1 topic in terms of the agenda of international relations. And it's going to be a permanent #1 for decades to come. Now we have wars that pop up and become #1 for a short period. We have crises, but in terms of issues, climate change and everything that flows from it is #1. Climate change impacts land use. Land use impacts where people live and where people migrate from. So climate change impacts migration. Migration impacts politics. It can impact negatively a country's economics if they don't have the ability to absorb migrants. It can impact negatively a country's politics if it upsets the political balance. We saw that here in Europe. When you have migrations coming in, you have populist parties or extremist parties taking power, and it disrupts. So it can be disruptive. Not can be. Climate change is disruptive in terms of food security, in terms of migration, in terms of political stability. You name it, it impacts you. You can't get away from it. And the solution to climate change, or the way to deal with it, is through multilateral approach, because climate change doesn't put a border around your country and say, oh, this country is doing enough, let me avoid it. It's like COVID. It doesn't care about your race, your gender, your religion, your nationality. It's going to impact all of us, and we cannot deal with it in isolation, just like with COVID. We have to deal with it collectively. And so the question then becomes, what is the most efficient way? Do you want to talk about it? I think we're beyond that. As a global community, or do you want to do something about it? I think that's where we need to be. That's where we are in Saudi Arabia. And when you look at what we have done and what we are doing domestically, there is no question of the extremely high level of commitment from the top down in Saudi Arabia. All of these initiatives that we have, 80 plus initiatives, the commitment of tremendous financial resources. All of these initiatives are managed by committees and groups and councils, and all of them chaired by His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, our Crown Prince and our Prime Minister. That's how significant this is. Very hands-on and very committed, and the message to everybody is, this is important, and this we will devote a lot of time, effort, resources to dealing with it. And frankly, we do it. Yeah, we're nice guys, nice people, but that's not the reason. The reason is our survival depends on it. And our survival is linked to the survival of our planet. And we cannot allow the destruction of the planet to keep going on while we watch. And we want to be the example of how one solves this, whether it's by committing resources, whether it's by trying to mobilize the world to work together, not argue against each other, to work together to deal with this problem, or whether it's by helping others that need support. There are countries that need support with regard to food security, with regards to having a more resilient infrastructure, with regard to access to clean water, with regard to, Saudi Arabia launched the Global Water Initiative in order to ensure that every human being on the planet has access to clean water. We are doing all of these, and you look at the activities of the Saudi Fund for Development in the Caribbean and Central America, in Africa, in the island nations in the Pacific. We are working to help countries with infrastructure, with education, with healthcare, with food security. We launched an initiative to provide food security after the conflict in Ukraine began, when food prices went up, in order to help developing countries have access to food at reasonable prices. It was a commitment of $10 billion that His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed announced at the time, and we continue to do these things. So back to your question, it is at the top of the agenda because it is so important, at the top of our international agenda, not only for Saudi Arabia, but I would argue for every country on the planet.
We can certainly relate to this with His Royal Highness being our chairman and really pushing this agenda very hard at NEOM across multiple levels. One last question, Your Excellency. You talked about the need of the hydrocarbon producing countries to be part of the discussion. How does that position Saudi Arabia in these multilateral organizations, being the largest globally? Are we seen like we need to do more because of the production of oil and gas that we have? Or are we seen to be like an honest broker in these conversations?
We want to be a realistic partner, and we want the world to be realistic. I mentioned hypocrisy. I'll give you a very simple point. Our friends in Europe used to tax oil, and probably many of them still do, at 200%. And one of the arguments was in the name of the environment. And while they were taxing oil at 200%, they were subsidizing coal, which is a worse polluter. Why? Coal is a worse polluter, so shouldn't you be taxing it at 400%? Because coal is produced domestically. Oil is imported, so it became a source of... That's, to me, not realistic. We are saying that hydrocarbons will be the main source of energy for the world for many, many decades to come. So now we have to live with this, because you don't have yet economic alternatives. We in Saudi Arabia have been arguing since the 1980s, and its statement, look at the statements of our previous ministers of petroleum. We have said that that oil is a finite resource, that the world will run out of oil eventually, that the ability to produce is capped by the size of the fields and by the depletion rates and by the technology. Meanwhile, the world's appetite for energy keeps expanding as more countries develop, as more countries emerge out of low-income status to middle-income status. Where is this energy going to come from? And we have been arguing since the early 80s. There needs to be more solar, more wind, more hydro, more nuclear. That's where you meet the future growth of demand. And we established 2 solar villages in Saudi Arabia in the late 70s, early 80s to look at this new technology and experiment with it, because this was our commitment. So now we are people talking about solar, nuclear, hydro power, and we're saying, we have been saying this for more than 40 years. So we go back to energy. Hydrocarbons will be with us for many decades to come. We are producing it in a very efficient manner, in a very clean manner. We are encouraging other producers to have standards where we eliminate flaring, where we minimize leakage. We are doing it in Saudi Arabia by example. No oil industry is as efficient and clean as the Saudi oil industry. We use drones to detect leaks. Flaring is we're eliminating that and have been doing it since the mid-80s. So we think, let's work on other things also. Let's work on sequestering of carbon. Let's work on designing cities to be more efficient so people use less. Let's work on more natural preserved areas so that we create more natural ways to capture carbon. Let's work on alternative sources of energy. We are huge investors in solar and wind and hydro. We are huge investors in clean hydrogen. The largest green hydrogen plant in the world is produced in NEOM. And more important, and just as important, we are large investors in transmission, in ways to transmit this green energy. Because if you can produce it, but you can't take it to market, it's useless. So we intend to be the largest energy exporter in the world, and we would want to be able to export our green energy to Europe and to other places, and we are putting in place the infrastructure in order to be able to do so.
Great. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your time. Thanks for being with us here today. We really appreciate the time, taking time off your busy schedule. I'm sure the crowd enjoyed hearing from you, and hope we continue this conversation.
Thank you.
As we go along. I certainly really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shukran.
Thank you.